In the last part of this video series on GLP agonists, we will talk about the efficacy of GLP-1 agonists, both for glycemic control and chronic weight management. The information provided in this video should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem. Consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health plan. First, we'll compare Wegovy versus Saxenda for chronic weight management. Remember, these are the only two GLP-1 agonists currently approved for chronic weight management. For Saxenda, per the FDA label, under monotherapy at 56 weeks, these three studies were performed against placebo. In study 1, for both placebo and the Saxenda arm, baseline weight was 106.2, meaning the average weight of all of the participants in the trial was 106.2 kilograms at the beginning of the study. And for the placebo, there was a change of minus 3% from baseline. But for Saxenda, it was minus 7.4%, so more than double. Similarly, for study 2, the baseline weight for placebo was 106.5 and Saxenda was 105.7. And the weight change was minus 1.7 for placebo and minus 5.4 for Saxenda. The third study, the placebo weight was 98.7 and Saxenda weight was 100.4. So there's a little bit of difference there. However, the percentage change from baseline for placebo was actually an increase of 0.3. And for Saxenda, it was a decrease of almost 5%. For Wegovy, for monotherapy at 68 weeks per the FDA label, in study 1, the baseline mean in kilograms was 105.2 for placebo, 105.4 for Wegovy, very similar. But if you look at the percentage change from baseline, minus 2.4 for placebo and a very impressive minus 14.9 for Wegovy in study 2, minus 3.4 for placebo, minus 9.6 for Wegovy, and in the third study, minus 5.7 for placebo versus minus 16% for Wegovy. Again, another very impressive number. And in the subset, 106.9 baseline mean was the highest in any of the arms and in any of these studies. So heavier patients leading to pretty good results. And if you look at the percent number of patients losing greater than or equal to 5% body weight, 84% of the individuals in study 3 under the Wegovy arm lost greater than or equal to 5% of their body weight. 73% lost 10% or greater, and then 53% lost 15% or greater. So again, Wegovy showed higher efficacy in the clinical studies, and compared to Saxenda, it does look like it does have the ability to cause more weight loss. But with these weight loss therapies, you have to keep taking them. There is evidence that if you do stop, the weight will come back if you remain at the same diet and exercise. For the glycemic control, we're going to look at 8 different products. First, Trulicity. Per the FDA product label, there is information on a monotherapy study at 26 weeks comparing low-dose Trulicity, which is 0.75 milligram, versus high-dose Trulicity, 1.5 milligram, and the comparator arm of metformin between 1,500 and 2,000 milligram. The baseline HbA1c for all 3 arms were 7.6, and the change from baseline was minus 0.7 for low-dose Trulicity, minus 0.8 for the high dose, and metformin was minus 0.6. So the high-dose Trulicity did have the greater reduction of HbA1c, though it was a minor difference. For fasting serum glucose, The baseline numbers were 161, 164, and 161. And the change from baseline for the low dose Trulicity was minus 26, high dose minus 29, and metformin minus 24. So sort of in line with what we see with the HbA1c. And then change of body weight. You can see similar results where the high dose Trulicity led to the greater reduction in body weight, though the metformin loss was kept up with it. So the numbers here are pretty straightforward, where it looked like Trulicity was slightly better than metformin alone, and the high dose Trulicity was slightly better than the low dose Trulicity. But one of the things you have to think about is the difference in numbers here between high dose and low dose worth the extra side effects you may see by taking a higher dose Trulicity versus a lower dose. So these are things to think about and discuss with your doctor. Next, Byetta. If we look at a similar comparison, but this time it's with placebo, baseline 7.8 versus Byetta low dose was 7.9 HbA1c, and Byetta high dose was 7.8 baseline. And as expected, placebo was a slight difference, minus 0.2. Low dose Byetta minus 0.7, and the high dose was minus 0.9. For fasting serum glucose, pretty much the same. A slight change for the placebo. Byetta low dose minus 17 and high dose minus 19. So again, we expect higher dose to have a greater effect. And then with the body weight, same thing, placebo minus 1.5, Byetta low dose minus 2.7, and the high dose minus 2.9. So as expected, the higher dose would lead to greater reductions in these values. Next, for Victoza, there's a high dose at the first arm was high dose 1.8 milligram, low dose 1.2 milligram, and in this study it was a comparison to a sulfonylurea, which is called glimepiride, trade name Amaryl. Baseline numbers for HbA1c were the same, and as you can see, high dose Victoza led to a greater reduction in HbA1c at minus 1.1. Low dose was minus 0.8, and the sulfonylurea was minus 0.5. So Victoza 1.8 led to more than a double change from baseline than the sulfonylurea alone. Similarly, for the fasting serum glucose, the Victoza led to a substantial greater reduction in the fasting serum glucose levels as compared to the glimepiride. And then for body weight, the high dose Victoza was minus 2.5 change and low dose minus 2.1. And the glimepiride was an increase of 1.1. And this is something we expect to see. If you remember the discussion we had on sulfonylureas in the previous video, they do have a tendency to cause weight gain because of how they work in the body. And so these numbers here do prove that, are in line with the pharmacology behind the product. Next, Adalimumab. This is a comparison to placebo, monotherapy at 12 weeks. Baseline HbA1c was the same. Placebo slight decrease, and the Adalimumab was minus 8.3. A little bit less than 1, but substantially greater than the placebo. Fasting serum glucose, again, so you see a big difference here. Placebo actually had an increase in the fasting serum glucose, and the Adalimumab had minus 15. For body weight, surprisingly, placebo had a greater loss at 2.03, and the Adalimumab had a decrease of body weight at minus 1.94. The next product is the Bydureon. Remember, this is the extended release version, similar to Byetta, but the extended release of it. The study that was mentioned in the product label was a monotherapy at 24 weeks, comparing Bydureon to metformin, sitagliptin, and pioglitazone. The HbA1c were similar in all four arms, between 8.4 and 8.6. The Bydureon change in HbA1c was a decrease of minus 1.6 compared to metformin at minus 1.5 and sitagliptin minus 1.2 and pioglitazone minus 1.7. So at 24 weeks, the Bydureon really didn't show much more efficacy than metformin alone versus pioglitazone alone. Ozempic, which is a very popular product out on the market, in the study of a low dose Ozempic at 0.5 versus higher dose at 1 milligram versus placebo, similar baseline HbA1cs at 8 and 8.1. The change in HbA1c, placebo had a very small decrease, and then the low dose Ozempic dropped the HbA1c by minus 1.4, and then the high dose Ozempic minus 1.6. So we do see a significant difference between Ozempic and placebo, and the Ozempic higher dose led to more HbA1c reduction. Similarly, for the fasting serum glucose, the baseline glucose was 174, 174, and 179 across the three arms. Placebo had a minor, small decrease in the glucose level. Ozempic low dose minus 41, and Ozempic high dose minus 44. So again, in line with what we see with the HbA1c and what we expect to see versus placebo and a low dose versus a high dose. Next, Rybelsus, which is the oral tablet version of the same active substance in Ozempic and Wegovy. For the HbA1c, the baseline in the placebo was 7.9 versus 8 in the high dose and low dose Rybelsus. The decrease in the HbA1c in the placebo, minor decrease, and then a greater decrease in the low dose Rybelsus at minus 1.2 and then minus 1.4 for the higher dose. Similar for the fasting serum glucose, slight decrease for the placebo, minus 28 decrease in the glucose for low dose Rybelsus, and minus 33 for the higher dose. The last one, Mounjaro, monotherapy at 40 weeks, was a comparison of placebo versus three dosing arms of Mounjaro, 5 milligram, 10 milligram, and 15 milligram. The baseline HbA1c in the subjects were between 7.9 and 8.1. And interesting point here is that the low dose Mounjaro led to a HbA1c decrease of minus 1.8. The 10 milligram and the 15 milligram had minus 1.7. So surprising to see that the lower strength actually led to a slightly higher change in the baseline HbA1c. This is also represented in the fasting serum glucose, where the low dose Mounjaro had a decrease of minus 40. The middle dose at 10 milligram was minus 40, and the 15 milligram Mounjaro was minus 39. So again, surprising to see that. With body weight, this is where we do see more of an expected difference, where the low dose, middle dose, and high dose respectively had the same level of reduction along with the amount of dosing they received. So low dose Mounjaro minus 6.3 kilograms, middle dose 7, minus 7, and then the high dose minus 7.8. So that's more in line with what we would expect to see. Now, with these 8 different products out there, taking into account all of the information we've discussed in these 4 videos, talk to your healthcare provider and see what's best for you. There will be a lot of different factors that will help you decide what is best. tablet versus injection, daily versus weekly, the side effects that you may see in one versus another, some of the efficacy numbers here that we see, lower dose versus higher dose, and so on. So lots of things to think about when you have a wide selection. And I'm sure there's more coming to make things more complicated. Thank you for watching this video series. We hope it was beneficial for you and helped you learn more about these products that are available on the market. Let me know in the chat what other topics you want me to cover. And again, do like our videos and share them, and also subscribe to our channel. Thank you.